Hey there YouTube, this is Karzar here. Today I'm going to be showing you a comprehensive guide on how to install subwoofers, an amp, and a capacitor with a line-out converter if you do not have an aftermarket head unit. Alright, so let's begin. So what you will need for the amp is the amp, 4 screws, 4 washers, either a 4 gauge, 0 gauge, or 8 gauge depending on your preference or your amp's requirements. A 4 gauge positive wire with O-rings attached. This is really easy. All you do is just tape up the O-rings to the ends of the wire. You will also need a ground for the O-ring. You have an O-ring on this end, and then the only reason I did this was because my ground wire was a little short. You have a capacitor. I have a 2 farad Planet Audio. However, you are free to get whatever one you want. It is better typically to get more farads for more watts. I have 1000 watt, so therefore 2 farads should be enough, because the rule is 500 watts per farad. So now you also have the positive end for the capacitor and the negative ground for the capacitor. It is pretty important to ground the capacitor separately from the amp. Alright, moving on. You have a line-out converter. If you do not have an aftermarket head unit, you will need one of these. Basically, this brown wire is the ground, so it stops extra static. These two are the right speaker, these two are the left speaker. All you do is you splice into the speakers, right and left, respectively. This is where it comes out of. You plug this into the RCA jack on the amp. Where it says input, right and left. And you have your subwoofers. Mine comes with a plexiglass box with the ports already installed. I'm not going to be showing on how to install or how to wire up your subwoofers manually. However, these were bought together in the box. And the tools you will need will be a plier, Allen keys, screwdrivers, and you will also need a drill in order to drill into the car. Part 2 is where you will be drilling into the back wall of your car. One important thing is that you must make sure you have a remote wire going from your head unit to your capacitor and your amp. As it says right there, remote wire is what you plug in here. And on the capacitor, this is where you attach the remote wire. What you will need to do, the first step, is to start removing some of the trimming. Start removing some of the trimming of your car. Like I've done so far. And then, as you can see, I've fed the blue remote wire underneath here, down here, underneath here, and up into my head unit. I will show you how to attach this to the proper wire in the head unit. Out the trim from the head unit. The next step is to remove the head unit. Now that you have removed the head unit, you can take this out, disconnect the antenna, and then to disconnect the radio, you pull up until this comes out. Pin 18 or 16, or not 18, sorry, 16. Alright, as you can see, I have already done so, but you see this wire right here, this white one, all you do is you splice into it. Simply take a scissors, cut the stripping, and then wrap this blue wire around it, and then put the electrical tape back on. Now that you've connected your antenna wire, we can move on to the next steps. Alright, now these have been reconnected. simply slide back in. Put the screws back. The radio is screwed back in. Now you should reapply the trim. It has been reapplied. Now all that's left to do is you have to tuck this wire away underneath these plastic pieces along the top. Hold on. Tuck this wire away underneath this trim piece right here to bring it underneath there. Now the next step is to pull the remote wire through. Make sure before you do any work with the electrical, you disconnect the battery, as I've done so. The next step will be to connect the remote base wire. This is included with many amps that you are sold. This was included with my Hyphonics amp. It's simply a long Ethernet. Is you're going to take this base boost wire and you're going to fit through the grommet. The same one. And if there's no hole, you're going to have to just take a scissors and cut through it. Now that they're done inserting these in the grommets, you put all the trim back, like so. And you have installed the bass boost controller. It is time to move on to the back. We can start working on the amp now. The positive to the positive terminal. And remember, do not work on the car at all unless your negative terminal is disconnected. So, at first what I'll do, I've pre-loosened all my bolts already, so you don't have to worry about it. Simply connect this like such, and then just re-screw it, and then make sure when you're done you tighten all these bolts so that there's no loose components. Now, one important fact about the ground is that you have to make sure it is on a sanded surface. Take this for instance. This surface right here, it has been sanded properly so that you can attach a proper ground. And you rub back and forth. You rub back and forth until the metal is completely bare, like so. Here's a second instance where I will be attaching the ground for the capacitor. Right here. This surface is perfectly bare because you can see the light shining back. Make sure that when you're done, you tighten this. This will go directly into the amp in the negative terminal. This will connect to the capacitor. Now we will connect the ground for the capacitor. One end is for the terminal of the capacitor, and the other is for the ground. The amp. Now all that's left is the positive for the amp, which is right here. So the amp will be connected to this positive right here. It'll go to the capacitor positive terminal. This will also connect to the capacitor positive terminal. Inline fuse, then battery. This will be ground for the amp. It'll connect directly to the amp along with this. Now we connect the capacitor. What we first do is we make sure we ground the capacitor using the ground that we've connected here. And then what you're going to do is you're going to unscrew the remote wire. You're going to screw this back in place. Now grab a screwdriver and an Allen key. Put them in place. This one's connected properly. That one's connected properly as well. Is you have to disconnect the negative terminal first. Now we will begin charging the capacitor. You will connect the resistor to the positive terminal. Connect the positive to the resistor. Connect the resistor to the terminal. Now it is stable. The voltage is climbing, all the way to top voltage. Once this reaches about 10 or 11, you can feel free to disconnect the positive and directly connect the positive terminal of the battery end. Now that you're done connecting the terminals, you can simply suspend the capacitor wherever is convenient for you. I have attached my secure ring on the end of my capacitor. All the terminals are connected as properly. I also have the positive end connected ready for the amp. Now it is important to keep the positive end from the capacitor to the amp as short as possible so that when the amp needs more electricity, it can get it at a moment's notice instead of increasing the length of the wire. Increasing the length of the wire increases the resistance, which just adds a mess of problems. So keep this short from the capacitor to the amp. In order for you to get the amp working properly, you will first need to have the remote wire wired properly. Usually it's about the second Allen key. In order to open it, you have that loosens it. All you have to do is stick the remote wire right into here and then tighten the Allen key. Now grab your Allen key and then twist it in place. Make sure you twist it tight so that this wire remains stable. This wire is now clamped in properly. Now from the battery, instead of the battery, it'll be coming directly from the capacitor. This one right here. Alright, so the easiest way to wire this is you take the positive and the negative in one of them, pull it all the way out. Two of these goes to one subwoofer, and then the second pair of wires go to the other subwoofer. These are wired in parallel. All you do is you simply take these two wires and then you attach it into these lines. Now remains the question of what are we going to do about the input from the radio. Where are we going to get the input? Well, that's what the line out converter is for. I'm going to be showing you how to install this now. Okay, here's screw number one.
Hold still. I know. Maybe you should do this side first. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Alright, next one. The hard one.
Left? Okay.
Whatever. Last one.
I need to use my right.
Alright, now that we have connected the amp to the back wall, now we're going to attach all the wires into the amp like I've shown you how to do. So, I will get back to you once I'm done with that. Alright, now they have connected the positive to the capacitor. You have connected the ground to the proper ground. You have connected the positive from the battery to the capacitor, and you have connected the remote wire that you have spliced from the amp remote wire. Now that you've shrink tubed this, I've double taped it so that this extra tubing will not come off. Now it's time to install the line out converter. Now in order to do that, you're going to have to get access to two speakers, the left and the right. The closest speakers to the amp would be these two rear deck speakers. This one and this one. The two rear deck speakers. Now, in order to do that, what you have to do is you have to get access to them and splice into them. I will show you. So, what I've done is I've taken the cover off. I've gone into the speaker, removed the rear deck speaker, and what I've done, disconnected the speaker, removed the speaker, and spliced into the speaker with some extra speaker wiring that I have. And then drop it through into the trunk. Alright, make sure that this wire stays in this bucket so that you can reattach your rear deck speaker. You do the other side too. I've already pre-spliced these. Both speaker grill covers are back on. And we have speakers in the trunk coming from the top this speaker, and we have it coming from that speaker. Now all we have to do is connect these to the right, these to the left, and then you ground this wire so that static doesn't come. Two RCA cables into the amp, and that's it. I've connected my wires. I've connected the gray and the gray black to the right channel. I've connected the white and the white black to the left channel, as my diagram tells me to do. Alright, so I'm testing the output if I've connected the speakers correctly. The ground is connected up there. Speakers to the right. And I've connected this to my Bose audio system to see if I can actually get the proper sound. Both speakers are functioning perfectly, which means that the output is working correctly. Now that I've tested my output, I can tape these up, and then I can put this line out converter into that little zip tie right there. And then I connect this directly into the amp instead of this Bose system. Now it's time to test if the amp is properly producing the bass output. Now, since the bass is at a 0 low pass, 0 subsonic, you're not going to hear any frequencies. So first thing to do is you need to turn your low pass up. so you can let some of the frequencies in. Set it around halfway. Subsonic, it should be set around, let's say 30 Hertz, a little more, so that you can let some of the lower frequencies in. Low pass lets the high frequencies in. So now you set the gain up, set it around, let's say 75% maximum. I like to keep my gain around 75% so that I can get a good amount of bass. Now your bass boost should be set halfway up. Now it is optimal that you keep your bass less than 75% so that you don't end up blowing anything. You can tune it manually from inside the cockpit. So we are getting a good amount of distortion. Now all that's left to do is clean up and put the bass in the trunk. Leave some room for the amp to breathe. Alright, now the bass has been tuned, it has been put away, everything has been cleaned up. Everything's fully functional. Now it's just enough to clean up the rest of the car. Just have to put the seat back and make sure all the interior trim pieces are back together, and then you're ready to listen to your bass.